Good morning and welcome to another Seize the Day. Today's Friday, August 22nd. Trust you guys are waking up feeling refreshed and ready to begin a new day. I see that my friend Wilda is from North Carolina. Trust you guys are staying safe with this rain and storm that's coming. But as usual, grateful to be a part of this community with you and trusting that you guys are doing well. We've been in this series called Show and Tell. It began with a look at John chapter 4, where we saw Jesus introducing himself to this Samaritan woman and the manner in which he did it. There was this cultural, really obstacles that needed to overcome. Jesus being a Jew, a woman being a Samaritan, and a woman, and yet Jesus spent time with her, and it's one of the rare times in the Bible that Jesus actually comes right out and tells the person that he is the Messiah. Well, when the disciples show up, it was a different story, right? It took that woman a nanosecond before she realized that she probably really wasn't welcome, because it says she left her water jar and then she went into the town to speak to her friends about Jesus. Their curiosity is raised and they come out, and as they're on their way back, Jesus makes this reference to a harvest that is ready. But it's 4 more months until a harvest. But he's not talking about grain. He's talking about those people. And he's telling the disciples that they need to be ready for this harvest, that they too are entering into a work that many people have gone before them. There are those who have already, planted seed, and there are others that have been watering this plant for quite some time. And it may be that they are in a position now to harvest what they have not worked for. And so you begin to recognize that this story of redemption is going on from generation to generation. And so we called this series Show and Tell, because God has been showing and telling us all about him. And now we get this opportunity to go out into the world and share that with other people. And so we talked about some of the attributes that may give us a little bit more confidence that we are engaged in this work, right? About the work that we're engaged in. And so we looked at passages, like Psalm 139, where we talk about that God knows us so well. And he promises to be with us always. So that why would I be afraid about, speaking out? Hebrews gives me examples of a cloud of witnesses that are out there who have shown a demonstration of a fidelity to God, even though they weren't perfect, right? Many passages like that. But now we've been in 1 Corinthians chapter 3. And one of the things I'd like to do here is to bring to your attention, again, this passage. So being it's Friday, what I'd like to do is maybe just read the text and then end with our last paragraph that we find here. So we started talking about spiritual maturity and division, because that was the topic here of the first 4 verses. So in 1 Corinthians 3, it says, brothers, I could not address you as spiritual, but as worldly, mere infants in Christ. I gave you milk, not solid food, for you are not ready yet for it. Indeed, you're still not ready. You are still worldly. For since there is jealousy and quarreling among you, are you not worldly? Are you not acting like mere men? For when one says, I follow Paul, and another, I follow Apollos, are you not mere men? So here, the passage, right, is saying that the jealousy and quarreling is amongst the people in regards to their leaders. And that is what Paul is saying is demonstrating that they are worldly. They're not being spirit-led. They are not ready for more substantial spiritual food. In fact, they need to go back to the basics. And so as a result, he goes on and he says, what, after all, is Apollos? And what is Paul? Only servants through whom you came to believe, as the Lord has assigned to each his task. I came to know the Lord through a gentleman. Actually, I made a profession of faith at a Billy Graham crusade in Shea Stadium when I was 13 years old. I was the only young person from the church that I was a part of at the time that went forward. In fact, they were kind of miffed at me because I held up the bus from leaving, and everybody was sitting around waiting for me. But I look back and I think that that was a pivotal point. And you know, that was Billy Graham. You know, God used him mightily, but he doesn't know my name, right? He doesn't really know me, but God used him in my life, just like he's used other people to bring me along this faith journey. So it's the same way here. Paul's saying, listen, what are these servants? But you know, these individuals are servants through whom you came to believe, as the Lord has assigned to each his task. So each has a unique role. But he says, I planted. Paul's saying, I planted, Apollos watered, but God made it grow. So neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, but only God who makes things grow. The man who plants and the man who waters has one purpose, and each will be rewarded according to his own labor. For we are God's workers, you are God's field, God's building. So here we find then that there is a unique role that we are all to play, that we have been tapped on the shoulder by a great commission to go out into all the world and make disciples, to make sure that our life, the light is shining, that people can see and they can hear, and there is no discontinuity between what I'm saying and how I'm living. We are the light of the world, and it is a title that also comes with a warning that the light could be hidden, right? But we ought to be making certain that that light shines, that they would see our good work and glorify our Father who is in heaven. So with that definition of servanthood, then, Paul goes on, and what does he say? But look at verse 10. He says, by the grace God has given me, excuse me, I laid a foundation as an expert builder, and someone else is building on it. But each one should be careful how he builds. So now it goes from the individuals, right? But it also then now is focusing in on their work, those unique contributions that we're making. And it's saying we have to be very careful how we're building. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid, which is Jesus Christ. If any man builds on this foundation using gold, silver, costly stones, wood, hay, straw, his work will be shown for what it is. Why? Because a day of judgment is coming. It's going to bring it to light. It's going to expose. And how? With fire. The fire will test the quality of each man's work. It's the refining element of this fire that is going to prove whether or not our work is substantial, able to stand up to the heat. But as it says, don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple, and the Spirit, God's Spirit, lives in you? And if anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy him. For God's temple is sacred, and you are that temple. That's one of the most, I think, sobering words in this paragraph so far. It's one thing to just be rebuked and corrected, saying, listen, guys, that is a very poor attitude. Come on, let's get your acts together. You're better than this. It's kind of like if you have children and they were arguing, right? And you're like, come on, guys, will you just knock it off? Like, this is really silly. You guys are arguing about things that are really of no consequence. And usually it's because somebody borrowed a shirt or somebody doesn't want to let them change the channel on the television. It's so dumb. But here in this church, he's saying, don't you guys realize that the servants that are serving, they are there to fulfill a purpose? That you are the church of God. You are a building in which God has chosen to dwell. That means that you and I are the living stones in a in the church that he is building. And then here's the soberness about this. It's not just about being corrected or rebuked, but God says if anyone destroys God's temple, if anyone is in the process of demeaning the very church that God is seeking to establish, it says God will destroy him. You want to destroy the church. You may not even realize it, but he says this behavior that you're engaging in is undermining the very work that I'm trying to do. And because my church is sacred, right? It's been set apart. Why? Because the church is the hope of the world. If the church is fulfilling its mission, is it not going to be a place where people find refuge? Is the church not going to be a place where they will find community, forgiveness, redemption? Is it not a place where we get to showcase something of the attributes of the Spirit that is now dwelling within us? So people, when the church is at its best, they come in and they're going to experience love and joy, peace and patience, gentleness, goodness, faithfulness, kindness, self-control. See, this is why God's saying, I have established this church, not because it's perfect, but to show the world what happens when an individual becomes reconciled to me. When their transformation, it affects their heart and their minds, and they are being conformed more and more into the image that I gave them. And all of a sudden, come on, you guys are those people. At one point that you may have been walking away, and now all of a sudden God has caught your heart. Haven't you found yourself sometimes you're sitting there and maybe a worship song comes on, and those words hit you in such a way that day that the tears start coming down your face, and you just cannot imagine what your life would be like without Jesus. I have a funeral today for a gentleman that was on the pulpit committee when I came to Bethany Church. He came out to visit me when I was out in Oregon, pastoring a church there, and his name is Bob Hunter, and just a great guy. But he suffered, for many years with Parkinson's, and now I've been at Bethany now almost 24 years, and so Bob, I think I was at Bethany maybe about 3 years when he started to show signs, and he was a young man. But over these years, it just took its toll, and God called him home this past week, and so I'm doing his funeral, and whenever I do a funeral, I think about speaking to those who are present, because Bob has already received his reward. He has woken up in glory, right? He's woken up in heaven, and now that's home. I mean, his life has changed for the better. The life that he experiences now is like something he has never experienced before. And so we wouldn't want to wish him back. But for those who remain, we grieve, but not as those who have no hope. And so whenever I do a funeral, I want to make sure that I'm putting Jesus front and center, that people recognize that Jesus is our very present hope. And that's a privilege to do that. And so people are going to come to this service who don't know Jesus. But what if they come to a church and they find it, bickering and, like it says here, contentious, jealousies, quarreling, people putting each other down so that they could lift themselves up. Oh, our worship is better than your worship, or we really know how to worship. You guys don't know how to worship, right? Our prayer ministry, we're super godly, man. We are at the throne of God. Like, give me a break. You can boast about all these things, but it's like it says in 1 Corinthians 13, right? It says that if I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am nothing more than a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. Yeah, like you could deliver your body to the flames to be burned. You could sell all that you have to give to the poor. But if you have not love, it says, I gain nothing. See, this is what the Apostle Paul is trying to bring home, that this work that God is doing in us individually, when it is brought together corporately, it is a sign to the world that God is not dead, that he's very much alive. And I know for many of you, you're giving your life to this. You participate. You're engaged. Doesn't it trouble you when you look out and you realize how easily sometimes the church, it gives itself a black eye, for no reason? Why do we have to do that? Pastors that embezzle money or sleep with congregants, right? The immorality that takes place, sometimes that even shocks the world. I don't know about you, but I just sit there and I shake my head and I go, on one level, I understand it because we all have feet of clay. That it's hard to resist the temptations of the flesh. But on the other hand, now that I've tasted and seen that God is good, that greater is He that is in me that's in the world. It's like that. It's like that old analogy, right, of two small kids, and the one saying, "Listen, you should give me the dime because my nickel, it's twice as big as yours." Wait a minute. Why am I going to trade the value that God has given me in His Son and in this hope of a kingdom that will never come to an end, of which I get to participate for eternity? Why would I give that up for something that's going to be passing? I pray that that's the attitude that I maintain until the day I come to see Jesus, right? Because if anybody thinks he stands, take heed lest he falls, right? Like, I don't want pride to enter into that. But what I'm saying is, I know that God is able to keep me. And as long as I'm doing my part, I never have to worry about God doing his. And he says that in my weakness, his strength will always be made sufficient. So, my friends, you see here this text of 1 Corinthians 13. We've been talking about show and tell. What are we showing to the world? What are we telling the world when either one, we don't participate in the very community that God has brought together, or we find ourselves, tearing it down? This verse 17, you should write it down. It says, if anyone destroys God's church, that's what he's talking about here, God is going to destroy him. For God's temple is sacred, and you are that temple. Well, let's finish up this passage. Verse 18, it says, do not deceive yourselves. Isn't that a mouthful? How easy is it for you and I to become deceived? Where, man, I am absolutely convinced, man, that my way is the right way. And then all of a sudden you find, that maybe there was a lot of presumption in that. Yesterday was pretty funny. I had parked my motorcycle, and I went with my wife Cindy to run some errands. And so I said, "Don't forget, on the way home, you just got to drop me off so I can get my bike." So we're in downtown Exeter, and we're driving along, and she just pulls off to the side of the road. I get out of the car, I grab my jacket and my helmet, and I'm just getting ready to go. And a guy comes up from behind me, and he's in a motorcycle, and he just barely comes by my car, and there's a driveway there, and he stops, and in an angry voice he says, "There's no parking here. This is a driveway." And I'm like, man, that was a lot of agitation for what was going to amount to be like 3 seconds, because I just got my jacket. It was obvious the doors were open. She was not parking. And so when my wife drove away, I just stood there and said, dude, she was just dropping me off so I could get on my motorcycle. And there's just like grumbling and rah, and he just like drives off. And I thought, okay, how often do I do that? That I may jump to some conclusions, and my reactions really aren't reflective of what's going on around me. I could do that with people, can I? I do that with myself. I could become deceived thinking that I'm all that when maybe um, I have become deceived. So here, this whole attitude of jealousy and quarreling, of the contention that's in the church, that is not giving the church a really good testimony. Paul then says here, don't deceive yourselves. If any of you thinks he is wise by the standards of this age, he should become a fool. You know what that word is in Greek? The word fool in Greek is the word moron. What does that sound like? Yeah, that's right, baby. That word is moron, right? It's saying, listen, if you think you're so wise, you should become like a moron, so that you may become wise. For the wisdom of this world is moronic in God's sight. As it is written, he catches the wise in their craftiness. And again, the Lord knows that the thoughts of the wise are futile. So then, come on, no more boasting about men. All things are yours, whether it's Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world or life or death or the present or the future. All are yours. You are of Christ, and Christ is of God. So here, this worldly wisdom, when compared to God's wisdom, is foolishness. And so therefore he says, listen, everything belongs to you. That this whole world that God is setting up now is so that it becomes the stage by which God is making himself known, because soon, we don't know when, but we know it's going to happen. He says, this world will come to an end. And in its place, there will be a new heaven and a new earth. The old will pass away, and behold, all things will become new. And Jesus is the orchestrator of all of that. His resurrection from the dead is that deposit now that is guaranteeing for you and me that we also shall be redeemed. I get to speak today at this funeral to remind people that Jesus is the resurrection and the life. And even though we are dead, believing in him, we shall live. And so, come on, God is just saying, listen, we have to contend with our stuff because we're all a piece of work, right? We're all just a piece of work. God is seeking to conform us more and more into his image by the renewing of our minds. And that word renewing is a word is where we get the word metamorphosis. God is changing us. And that word is what is changing us. See, the argument that Paul is making here is saying, listen, you guys are looking at everything by one standard. You're saying this guy's a better speaker, or look how eloquent he is. He has a better vocabulary. He looks better. Come on, man. The other guy, he doesn't even know how to dress right. Look, this guy's got a nice robe. Like, God's saying, come on, this is your standard. My standard is I'm looking at the heart. I recognize that I raised Apollos for a reason. I gave Paul all those gifts for a reason, and they're not the same. And so consequently, they're here to serve me, my purposes, my church. I tell people all the time, you have people that you like, great. It's like having a slice of bread. Now go make yourself a sandwich because they're all yours. I get to learn from so many different people. I buy books. I listen to tapes. I'm always trying to make sure that I'm not cutting my engines off. When the day comes that I tire of learning or finding better ways to communicate, yeah, then it's time to retire. It's time to hang it up. My wife and my sons, they'll say, Dad, when do you think it's time? And I go, When people stop listening, that's when it's time. Like I'm here to please an audience of one. And I get to do that with you. We engage each other. And then now you go, and in your circle of friends, you become the leader in that group. And by the tenor of your conversation, by the fruit of your own character, you're going to influence the world around you. And hopefully for good. You don't let the world influence you. You influence the world. You change it one person at a time. Just think if everybody just does their share. If the church really just begins to flex its muscles, it has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with legislation. It has everything to do with demonstrating to the world that there is a righteousness, there is a hope that will never disappoint us. And yes, it'll have repercussions in the way in which we live. But God isn't about establishing, this world is never going to be heaven. You've heard me say that many times, right? This world is never going to be heaven. But this world will one day be redeemed. So, my friends, I want you to think about this. I want you to think, how do we discern between worldly wisdom and godly wisdom, especially in today's culture? How do we maintain an identity in Christ that isn't being dictated by social movements or influencers? How do we stay the course when it seems like there are so many cultural shifts? You know how we do that? How we resist the temptation to idolize human wisdom or celebrity culture? We fix our eyes on Jesus. We allow his word to swim around in our brain and sink down into our heart. We take seriously that when God says something, he means it. And it should mean something to me, so that I'm building my life on the rock of a loyalty, a love for him and for his truth. And that, my friends, will keep us. It will grow us. It will demonstrate the power of God's church in the world in which we live. That, I think, is worth seizing. So you go out today and you seize the day. And I trust that you will always carry with you the reminder that God is good all the time. My friends, thank you for joining me this week, especially on today, this Friday. I trust you go out and just have a glorious weekend. And we'll come back next week. I'm going to look at a great passage from Luke chapter 10. And I'm going to preach on it this coming weekend. And then we'll spend the week talking about it. Listen, my friends, it's a pleasure and it's a privilege. And I thank you for the opportunity. So God bless you. Have a great day. And Lord willing, I'll see you on the weekend or next week. God bless.